This is Stephanie Díaz de León.
This is Rob Chappell.
This is Omar Waheed.
This is Dave Dahmer.
And it's 365 Amplified. We all sound a little sicky.
Speak for yourself.
Well, some of us sound more sick than others.
Ramadan starvation has caused my body to not accept germs because that would be a form of some nutrition for something, and that would be breaking my fast.
And I refuse. You're like, I'm not breaking it. Yeah,
I've not heard that before.
It's what I'm going with.
You're like, nobody complain. Have not eaten yet today and will not be eating.
I woke up too late to eat breakfast.
Oh,
I
did
was
you?
Too comfortable.
I was
it was nice and cold. It was like the perfect temperature in my apartment. I was like, you know what? Who really needs food?
Who needs breakfast? A student of mine yesterday, forgot to, did not wake up in time. Had her alarm set ready to go a couple of times. And just slept through it. She's like, it's too cold. I'm like warm in my bed. Same thing. And then she was like dying. She's like, I'm like, I don't want you to break anything. Here's more water. Can I get you fancy water? Can I get you? She's like, yeah, I don't know what. She was like starving. Yeah. We got a lot to talk about today.
Yeah, we got in the second half of the show. We'll have Jake Spence from VoteRiders on talking about the constitutional amendment that's on the ballot in April that would require photo ID for voting, which is already law, but they're trying to make it more law.
We're like double law. Yeah. Now it's double lawed or something like that, which is all right, y'all.
Pretty much. But we'll have that in the second half. But first, we're going to talk about a 10th anniversary.
Yeah. Why don't we go ahead and go right into that between you and Dave?
10 years ago yesterday, police officer Matt Kenney shot and killed Tony Robinson, who was evidently on mushrooms and was having a hard time and was allegedly had assaulted some people and was kind of running around in the street and causing kind of a ruckus. And so somebody called 911. Matt Kenney showed up, did not wait for backup. Backup was arriving, but Kenney didn't wait for the backup. He entered the building. He says Tony tried to punch him in the face. We don't have any evidence of that. But Kenney shot Tony Robinson 7 times, and Tony died later in the hospital. And that was, again, 10 years ago, so March 6, 2015. In the context at that time, that was a few months after Michael Brown in St. Louis, which was a month after Eric Garner in New York was killed by police, which was 2 years after Trayvon Martin was killed by George Zimmerman, which started the whole Black Lives Matter movement. So it was that was the context 10 years ago, and I don't know. Maybe we can talk about it. I don't know if anything's changed since then in terms of public attitude.
Yeah.
But anyway, Nick Garton, who's not here today, but he talked with Sharon Irwin, who's Tony's grandmother, who's been kind of leading the charge for these past 10 years on through the court system trying to get some justice. They did. The city of Madison did pay a settlement to Tony's mom years ago. That was like 18 or something. And District Attorney Ishmael Azan declined to prosecute Matt Kenney, say that he acted lawfully. There is a way for a citizen to spur a prosecution. The family went through that whole process last year, and was not successful. They're still seeking more options. Matt Kenney's still a police officer here in Madison. He still trains other officers. They kind of and Nick talked with Shadara Kilfoy Flores also, who was on the Citizens Oversight Board, who basically wants Matt Kenney finally just not to be a police officer here anymore. Dave, you've been close with the family over these 10 years.
Yeah, my oldest daughter knew him well, and there's just a gang of kids that kind of went on those East Side schools that kind of hung out together, and they knew each other really well, and they have so many different stories about Tony, and I've written a lot about him in the past, and I remember we didn't exist when this happened, but we were meeting and we were going to exist, and we couldn't really report on it, and we really wanted to. But then when we could, we reported a lot on it, and it was such a... Nick did a great job.
Yeah.
Reading it, you kind of felt like a parent, just trying to see your kid, trying to figure out what's going on, and he did a good job humanizing it with the story today in Madison365.com.
Yeah. I was thinking about that too. That this incident is one of the reasons we exist, actually, because, like you said, you and Henry Sanders and I had been meeting with this idea to start this digital news outlet for communities of color, and seeing the way Tony was depicted in the media, and the way the mainstream media here in Madison just believed the police, and and we're just so credulous, and Tony was depicted right away as a problem, and somehow deserving of death, and we looked at each other, the three of us, and we said, if we existed, if we were up and running right now, this entire narrative would be different.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, just think about a mile away from Willie Street, where he was killed. Like how much on UW campus, how much drugs get consumed. I've witnessed it when I was in school.
Right.
Shrooms, LSD, like all kinds of stuff, and kids, young people just acting weird and terrible, and nothing ever like this ever happens again because,
there's a little bit of a pause, right? Like in terms of like, now let's consider what that person might be going through, what their mindset be. Like there has been a bit of a change in thinking about someone's mental health and possibly them being in crisis and providing care rather than enforcement,
right?
Which has taken a lot of change for that to happen, and a lot of pushing, and possibly recognizing that the way that certain facts are presented is always through a lens of whiteness. Well, it is, right? On some level, that's what we've been encountering. Like 10 years ago with that story, it was like that lens of our first instinct is to protect and validate whiteness and affirm it in all the ways that we can, and we do that with our news stories sometimes. Which is why you all came out to exist, because you're like, that's not the right story. We are missing the fact that Tony was a human being who was probably in crisis, did not deserve to die like this, because he was, whatever it was, because he was on something or not on something. This was a young man who was a real person who was in crisis, and rather than help him and do right by him and serve and protect him, we decided that he must have been this harmful being that we had to end, and nobody has that right to do that and such. And so I think it is a important reminder, that we have grown so much in some ways within our society and our community, but there are still things that we perpetuate in these spaces. And
unless anybody has continued to operate under the illusion that Madison is not a racist city, or that anything has really improved since George Floyd, I want to talk about the response to the story on Reddit this morning.
Oh, well, I also want to remind, like you said, Matt Kinney is training officers.
Yeah.
Right? Like somebody whose first instinct was to use to harm somebody rather than, again, see what care they might need, is training the future police officers. Right. 10 years later.
I posted no commentary or anything like that. Often with stories like this, I'll just post a link into the Madison, Wisconsin subreddit, because a lot of people get news on Reddit. So and usually there's good discussion about things. And but this one, the first comment when I posted it, the first comment was, "Grandma is out of money again."
Oh,
y'all messy. The way that you all like to hang out with anonymous little avatars and names and such, and be this messy.
The post got downvoted. Just like not the. You can dislike the content, but also understand that it's valuable news.
Yeah, this was a real person that had changed.
People don't even want to hear that this is the 10th anniversary. They don't even want to be reminded of it,
because heaven forbid history repeat itself. Right. And heaven forbid that we take a moment to reflect and be like, are we the same? Have we changed?
No.
No. And, right? And somebody responded to that. And we that, she will milk this to her last breath. And I
don't know that. Here's the thing: I don't know that loss and grief is something that I want anybody to ever have to feel like they have to get over, because your feelings are this person's feelings, like not his family, but other people are triggered by the idea that you are not who you think you are, that your community is not who you think it is or what it is.
Mm-hmm. This is why I don't like Reddit or Twitter. It's because if you're going to post ignorance, you have to put your face and your family's pictures up next to it and everything. Because there's just too many bots and just too many things. You don't even know if this is real. So most of the time, it's like, is it even real or is this just a bot?
It's a messy thing.
And I don't even you don't know if this is a Madison person, but
no.
But I guess my better judgment, I commented that the city paid out a settlement ages ago, and nobody's after money at this point. Like if you read the story, they're not seeking money. They're seeking a prosecution.
An effective change.
Yeah.
Right? Something that does not happen again to anybody else's child or grandchild, because it still hurts. Grief is not like over after 10 years or whatever their assumption is, like, or a monetary amount. Any grief that someone you've gone through, like you go through, is again an extension and a different sort of medium of some kind of love, right? That it's just love transformed into trying to remember and hold on and a million other things. But within their grief, they're trying to make sure that this does not happen to anybody else again who looks like Tony, who like may be going through the same thing that Tony was going through at the time. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to hold a mirror to us to remind ourselves, like, have we changed? Have we reflected? Are we different now?
Yeah.
Are we better now? Have we done enough yet? No, that's all they're doing. They're asking us to reflect a little bit more.
Right. And if you're listening to this and trying to skip ahead because you don't want to hear about it, or you don't, it makes you uncomfortable to be reminded, maybe
sit in your discomfort. You're fine.
Give that some thought.
Yeah. You're fine. Just sit in it for a second.
Yeah.
It's all right.
So anyway, Nick did a very nice job on that
story.
To just kind of reflect on the 10 years and talk about some of they did have some remembrance events last night, and as they often have on the anniversary, and to kind of catch us up on how the legal system is working its way through this. So I commend that to you. It's at Madison365.org right now.
Now let's go ahead and move into our next story about I
feel like we're back in 2020.
I know. Well, for so many different reasons.
Measles is coming, you guys.
The measles are coming. That's what I mean. It's kind of like weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a measles outbreak in Texas right now, and another one in New Mexico. There's a child died in Texas. First measles death in 10 years. So being a nervous parent, I decided I just wanted to find out for myself, like, okay, is this coming? So I talked with AJ Sethi, who's a population health scientist and an epidemiologist, and Nasia Safdar, who's a doctor at an infectious disease specialist at UW Madison. Two of the sources I regularly relied on during COVID, and they were both very gracious and to talk to me again about measles. And Dr. Safdar said, it's only a matter of time till measles is here in Wisconsin. Dr. Sethi said he's not comfortable until 95% of the population is immunized in terms of population health. Because the thing is, it's more contagious than COVID.
Yeah.
Right? And you don't have symptoms for like 4 days.
Yeah, and by then you've
spread it to everybody you've come in contact with.
Absolutely.
So that's why it's so hard to contain. That's why you have to have 95%. And Wisconsin as a state is at about 85%. There are counties that are barely over 50%.
Oh, wow.
In Wisconsin. The highest, most immunized county in Wisconsin is, strangely, Waukesha County at 89%. But those levels of immunization are good, but not enough, and they're getting worse. Like, they're going down because people are not getting immunized. But if you are not immunized, if your kids are not immunized, you can do that at any time. It's not one of those that you have to wait for, or anything like that. So you can. It's never too late. Now's a good time to do that. I also have something about bird flu, because I was worried about that, because in the few cases that people have gotten bird flu, H5N1, it's been like 50% fatality rate. But the strain that is now getting into mammals, into cows, and into people is not fatal at all. Hasn't been, and it is not transmitting from human to human at all yet. So that's still okay. They're still keeping a close eye on it, but it's okay. But I also was just asking generally about the Health and Human Services Department at the federal level, having an anti-vaxxer as the Secretary of Health and Human Services, and they were both like, yeah, that's great.
Have you guys seen the Oregon Trail?
I mean,
died of measles.
Yeah, that's the thing. I was gonna just say, like, you know what we all should do? We all should get back on the Oregon Trail and learn how to define. Because I feel like, in so many ways,
what was the
dysentery next.
I was about to say dysentery.
Yeah.
Dysentery next, y'all.
Yes.
I mean, Milwaukee had that whole dysentery problem. We can bring it back. We can get dysentery.
We can get, y'all.
It's not eradicated.
I believe in us.
We can bring back these diseases.
This is what happens when you get an administration that's nostalgic for the distant past, when they think everything was better. There were diseases.
There were diseases.
Also, I will say, I asked
and
about
racism, y'all.
Yeah, because that's what I was just gonna say.
Very high tax rate.
Yeah.
Because measles, in the last outbreak of measles, the last big epidemic of measles in the 1989 to 91, children of color were like 7 times more likely to get measles.
Yeah.
Because they were far less likely to be vaccinated.
Yeah.
Not because their parents were active actors, but
No, because you would not offer to them. You would not offer children of color,
right,
black children, brown children, any sort of access to vaccinations.
Right.
Let alone like regular doctors.
Right. There has been after that there was pleasantly surprisingly a concerted effort to get more equity in vaccinations, and that. And so it's not expected, if there's an outbreak here, they feel like it will hit people more proportionally because vaccination rates are pretty equitable at this point in time.
Yeah.
You still have difficulty, inequities in access to healthcare once you get sick, if you get sick. But they're kind of optimistic that it won't hit. It won't have that 7 times disparity this time around if and when it happens. So anyway, I've got that story up with that at Madison365.org. I'll put a link to the show notes, but don't want to alarm anybody.
But just in case.
But get your measles shots if you don't have them.
And any other shot that you might need, because like Omar and I said, dysentery's next. I don't think it's next, but
Bully your anti-vax family members. My older brother.
Oh no! Look at
for you. No reason.
You just call him out right now.
For no reason.
Is it just like laziness? He's like, I don't want to go.
No, he likes to be edgy for some reason.
That's not edgy though.
He is also 31. So
I don't know how to tell you all sometimes that there's not edge in that.
Exactly.
Like in not getting a vaccination does not make you edgy. That's not it.
My older brother's like, oh, I don't want my daughter to be vaccinated. I was like, are you
sure?
Stupid? We're all vaccinated against everything.
Like a face tattoo is edgy.
Yeah. I was gonna say, like, get a piercing of some sort that nobody needs to know about. Like,
get a whole arm sleeve tattoo, and he's been to rehab. You're gonna draw the line here at vaccinations.
You've already put a lot of your body. Is that what you're saying? Like, you've already done enough to yourself. Gosh.
So, my niece is vaccinated.
I was gonna ask him, like,
did not listen to him.
Yeah, like you don't get a choice. She's gonna. We got to protect her. Let's go ahead and talk about Centro's new community outreach effort. Omar, this is a story you put up, which is a great story and awesome.
Do you have a yard? I don't, but if you do.
But do you have a window? Because you could put it in your window.
I don't like opening my windows or drawing my curtains because
you don't have to draw them. You could just put it in front of your curtain, like.
The apartment I live in, the windows are facing the parking lot and kind of near where everyone's coming and going. And I don't want people peeping into my
You don't have to peep
area.
into it. You could like close the drapes and put it up against your window.
Well, that's an option. But if you don't want to do that and you do have a yard, Centro Hispano is here with a new community campaign. Nuestros valores, our values, where I just want to bring people together. Remember our values as a community and Centro Hispano's own values on belonging, compassion, and a third one, community. Just go out and get a yard sign. Make you feel like you belong, especially in trying times where people seem to not be caring as much, or at least the politicians. Those signs are completely free to pick up.
But you should give $20.
They are encouraging a $20 donation, which can be made online or at Hispano. But just go there at 2403 Cypress Way anytime they're up and they're open, and go pick up a yard sign.
Just go to see the new building if you haven't.
Yeah.
It is a very, very nice building. I did not realize that large mural behind the desk was an actual art piece. It was like some decoration. But if you're saying like the right angle, I forgot what it is. But it's something.
Yeah, it's cool.
Very nice.
Cool.
Yeah. Now let's go ahead and move into possibly some updates from Madison College. Yes?
Yeah, folks remember Madison College President Jack Daniels III retired at the end of last year. And they actually named 3 finalists.
4?
Well, earlier they named 3 that were all people of color. One of them dropped out.
That's right.
And then they decided to start all over. And now they've named 4 finalists, right? And they are a couple of familiar names in there. Dr. Tim Casper is one of them. He's currently the interim because Jack Daniels was supposed to retire last summer, and then the search was taking a long time, so he stayed on until December.
Yeah.
And then they stopped the process and restarted the process, so they named Dr. Tim Casper the interim in January of this year. So he's one of the finalists. Dr. Jennifer Byrne from the Provost of Oakland Community College. And Dr. Charles Lepper, who's the president of Grand Rapids Community College, and the other name that our folks will recognize is Dr. Dawn Krim. She's currently UW Green Bay's Vice Chancellor for Advancement, Community Engagement, and Inclusivity, formerly Assistant State Superintendent of Public Instruction. She was the Secretary of the Department of Safety and Professional Services for a bit. And so those are the 4. They're going to have are they going to have like community engagement kind of things, or are they just meeting with like the board of Madison College?
I think they're going to have like forums coming up in March.
Oh, wow.
A chance for people to meet them.
That's awesome.
So that'll be watch for that. We'll make sure that the folks know.
Some big shoes.
I know,
fill, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they are big shoes, and they have an interim president, which means, I don't know, maybe make that person the new president. That's just my thoughts on interim. Anything.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, is that your thoughts for every interim?
Yeah, if they're good enough to be the interim president,
you think they have an inside track for sure.
Yeah, but it doesn't seem to be the case most of the time.
Yeah.
Well, and Tim Casper has been at Madison College since 2011, so like he was there before Jack Daniels was, so like he obviously has that institutional knowledge, and everything.
It all depends on what they're looking to do. Are they looking to shake things up a little bit, or do they like the way things are going?
Yeah,
right.
That's all what they're going through their minds right now.
Yeah. I wonder, Jack Daniels was the first black president of Madison College. Has Madison College ever had a woman president? I don't know.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Somebody write in news@madison365.org and tell
Rob
us.
needs to know.
I need to know. So anyway, we'll keep track of that process. That's obviously a very important institution for our audience in particular, and we'll let you know when the public forums are going to be and stuff, so you can go and weigh in.
Now let's go ahead and move into our next story, Rob.
I think this is another Omar joint, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Urban Triage held an open house for its new transitional home. The home is for adults who are aging out of foster care, and they gave an inside look into the place. It's a pretty swanky joint. I was pleasantly surprised because it is public assistance housing, which those are very institutionalized, but that's not something Urban Triage wanted to go for. They wanted to go for a very homey feel and make you feel like this is a place where you live and you build up your life, and not just a place you crash your head and go through programs.
How many people? What's the capacity?
There are 8 bedrooms.
Oh wow.
4 on the second floor, 3 on the first floor, and 1 for a live-in resident that's helping with the program.
Oh, sure.
Urban triage. That's on the first floor. But they're all sizable bedrooms, completely new. Nice size closets.
And where is this?
This is on the north side on Roth Street.
Okay.
Kind of by Oscar Mayer, I think. Back in there.
Sure. Yeah.
I was gonna say like across the street from House of Flavas, if you know where that is. But yeah, it's a very sizable house. Right now, they just have the actual first and second floor done. They're still working on the third.
Okay.
But they plan to have those done sometime between the summer and fall. Still working on that. You know, there's always delays with these construction projects, and people are living there, so you might gonna want to take their time there. But there's someone living there right now. So
oh wow, they're already underway.
Yeah,
that's such an important time of a person's life, and when you don't have the stability, you know, coming out of foster care, and there's kind of a gap in what you can get from the state or the county at that time in your life. So having a stable place to be and to live, and it have to be a nice place, is just really, really important.
Yeah, the pictures look great.
Yeah,
they look modern. And...
Thank you. I had to stand at very weird angles to get a lot of those. The bedroom, I was standing inside of the closet. It's kind of like, ow.
We're trying to compliment the
That's
place.
At Madison 365 that you don't get it.
Wide angle lens shots.
Here we are trying to compliment Urban Trion's choice of a place for folks. And Omar's like, no, thanks for my pictures. You're right. My pictures. Understand the angles.
We should be getting more credits for our photos.
Don't forget to affirm Omar in his pictures, y'all.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm a trained photojournalist.
You are. That story is up at Madison365.org. We're going to go ahead and take a break, and we come back, Rob's interview, and then our final question.
Hey, folks, it's Rob. I know you hear from me a lot on this podcast, and I hope you don't mind hearing from me one more time. I just want to mention Madison 365, as you know, is a nonprofit community media outlet. What does that mean? That means we do what we do not to make a profit for a hedge fund or a corporate conglomerate or for shareholders. We do what we do because it's important to you and to our community. You are our shareholders. That means we also need your support. We need you to buy in. We need you to support what we do, to support this work so that we can continue to do it, and to do it more and to do it better. Can you spare $5? Can you spare $5 a month? The fact that you're listening to this podcast is evidence that Madison 365 has been important to you. So, can you support us? If so, go to madison365.org/donate. We'll make it very easy for you. You can do a one-time donation. You can do a monthly donation right there. madison365.org/donate. Thanks a lot, folks. And we're back, and joining us now, Jake Spence, who's the Wisconsin coordinator for VoteRiders. Is that right? That's your title, right?
Wisconsin State Director.
State Director. Oh, sorry. I demoted you from State Director to coordinator. Thank you. Well, thanks for being here. Thanks for giving us the time. And we're going to talk specifically about a ballot initiative that would amend the Wisconsin Constitution to require identification to vote. But first, I want to ask you, Jake, tell us what is VoteRider, first of all?
Yeah, so VoteRiders is the nation's leading voter ID assistance and resource program. And so the many states now that have voter ID laws, which has increased over the past couple of years since all of the fear of election fraud and things like that. More states have gone towards implementing these voter ID laws that we've seen, I believe something like more than 35 states now. And in states like Wisconsin, who's had a voter ID law since all the way back to 2011, you have to show a relevant ID, an ID that is designated to meet certain criteria in order to register to vote, in order to cast your ballot. And so basically, we have, through some of our research with the Brennan Center and the University of Maryland and others, discovered that there's about 34.5 million Americans, voting age Americans, that don't have ID. And so really, it's really important for our work to be out there to find and to help these people make sure that they do have a voting eligible ID, to make sure that they're not being prevented from voting.
Mm-hmm. And of those 34 million people, that's like 10% of the population. That's higher than I would have thought. Who are those people? Do those people fall into any particular demographic?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit of everything, but we see that it does disproportionately affect voters of color, Black and brown people especially. When you look at these numbers, I believe it's something like Black voters aged 18 to 29, something like 40%, don't have a current state ID or driver's license, something that is unexpired that they would be able to use to vote. And so seeing a huge disproportionate impact on folks. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Part of it certainly is, purely economic, the fees to purchase a real ID or a driver's license, the economic cost of maybe having to take off of work, get down to the DMV, things like that.
Right.
And then, transportation has been an issue for a lot of people. Some folks just plain and simple don't have a way to get to the DMV. And so,
especially when they keep closing DMV offices.
Right. Yeah.
Right. When the DMV offices get further and further away from people.
Exactly. And so the opportunity cost for people, some people really just can't afford it. And unfortunately, in our studies, we've seen that that's disproportionately affecting voters of color.
And the other question then is, are those people likely to vote? I mean, are they wanting to vote, trying to vote, and unable to, or would they go try to vote if they did have the ID that they needed?
Yeah, I mean, we see a mix of everything. And again, part of this comes down to education then, and folks just really not being aware of what the laws are, what the rules are. Oh, I need this. Oh, I thought I needed that. Oh, I didn't think that I could. But, just the level of, misinformation almost, of people just really not understanding, the baseline of how things work for voting,
Yeah. And when you're just kind of trying to get by, it's hard to be like, well, it just seems like a lot that I got to do to vote, and I can't be bothered. I can't do that. This is too much. Yeah. So when you just make it more difficult, more complicated,
just more
steps,
barriers,
Yeah, exactly right. More barriers. So now, are you? Does VoteRiders take a stance on the requirements, or are you simply, the requirements exist, we're going to help you meet the requirements, or do you have to take a political side on whether these laws should even exist, whether your organization should even need to exist?
Yeah. Well, so VoteRiders is a nonpartisan nonprofit. We just began doing our advocacy work this year, as we're seeing things like documentary proof of citizenship and the SAVE Act at the federal level, things like that, and these state level happenings as well. And so what we're looking at is, to this point, hadn't looked at, okay, this ID should be on the list of approved things, things like that. I do think we're going to get into that realm, especially if this constitutional amendment passes. That will be kind of one of the only ways to chip away at this and make sure that voting is accessible. For us, our focus is really just on, one, making sure people understand the laws in their states, trying to get them the help that they need to make sure that they have an ID that meets that criteria. And so a lot of our work is actually the ID assistance program as well, physically working with individuals, helping them get underlying documents, maybe a birth certificate or social security card that they need, and helping them then get that ID. So that's where a lot of our efforts, traditionally have gone, is just trying to help people. But I think now we're really stepping into that realm of, let's examine these laws as they are spreading all over the country, and think about and consider, is this really the right way to do something like this?
Can you just tell us, what is the state, what is the actual law? Give us as much detail as you can, just off the top of your head. What is the law in Wisconsin right now?
Yeah, so in Wisconsin, there's a couple forms of ID that you can use, but some of the biggest, factors of whether or not an ID can be used Is it's got to have a picture, it's got to have a signature, it's got to have an expiration date. Excuse me. Typically from some government body or entity, and so we see state IDs, driver's licenses, tribal IDs, some student IDs. That's where we actually run into the hang up about expiration dates and signatures and things like that. And so, in Wisconsin, you might go to one college and your student ID is good. You might go to another college and it's not.
Gosh. So if your student ID has a photo and a signature and an expiration date, it is likely to be acceptable
within 2 years. That's the very specific thing. And a lot of four-year colleges, guess what? They're not giving out IDs every 2 years.
But a driver's license expires every 8 years, doesn't it?
Yeah, and even with the driver's license, if your license expired after the last federal election, so let's say my license just expired January 2025, I can still use it in 2026, but I can't use it beyond that. And these are like these little caveats that just like nobody knows really, right?
Right. So so if you're like a junior, you would have to get like a new ID or something.
Exactly. Yeah, you got to go down to the office. Got to go, and so it's
really
already confusing and already difficult for people, and we're preparing to.
But if you're a student and you don't have a driver license and you're not sure, you can call VoteRider and they'll help you out. Like you'll help, right? And we'll at the end here we'll talk about more specifically how to do that. So that's what the law is now. What is on the ballot on April 1st?
Yeah, so there is a ballot measure to create a constitutional amendment, basically putting this voter ID law that Wisconsin has had into the state constitution. And so basically, concerning for many reasons, but there's been a huge increase in the use of ballot measures in Wisconsin over the last several years, almost as a foil to legislation, right? And so we don't think we can get this legislation passed. You know what? If we can get this on the ballot, we actually think that this will go our way. And so, for us, it's concerning, one, that it's going into the state constitution because of the difficulties that courts and that legislators will have in undoing it or altering it. But two, the way in which it's being done is just a concerning measure as well. And talk about Wisconsin and recent news, Governor Evers trying to expand that ability to make sure that can voters actually determine what some of these ballot measures are, or is this only being done by a legislature that may at any point in time may or may not be gerrymandered, right? And so we're just getting to a place where it's like, is this how we want to be operating? Is this really the best way to go about something like this?
Right. So basically what they're asking, so the constitutional amendment wouldn't actually change or make it more restrictive the current law, but would just sort of make it maybe a little bit more permanent or a little bit at least harder to repeal should a future legislature want to repeal it.
Absolutely. Yep.
Is that accurate? So basically all they're asking you on the ballot on April 1st is that the voter ID requirements right now, do you like that? If so, we'll make it more permanent in the Constitution. That's basically what they're asking, which seems like a pretty low bar for people to be like, oh, sure, and vote yes. Are you advocating for a no vote on that?
We absolutely are, yes.
Okay. Partly because of just the way it's happening, but also because, why? Because maybe a future legislature could also these requirements, but once it's the Constitution, that's just really harder to do.
Exactly. And from our perspective, working with the individuals every day that need to utilize our resources and seeing people that just, don't understand how the law works, don't understand what they need or where to get it, we can actually see the real world harm that this is going to cause for people and the just barriers that this is going to put up for people that maybe your average person, doesn't interact with people about this issue or doesn't understand that there are 34.5 million Americans without these things. And so, it's really just kind of inconsiderate.
Well, I mean, I'm sympathetic, a tiny bit sympathetic for people like me or white people in the suburbs who are like, yeah, I have my license with me all the time. Like, what's the big deal? But because you don't think about that, it is actually kind of difficult to get a ID if you need to also go downtown and get your social security card and a birth certificate. I mean, it's not that simple.
Yeah, and a lot of people
don't know
where to start.
Right.
They say, okay, here I don't know anything about this, and just again, working with these people, you can actually understand kind of the turmoil, and just when people find out, the services we provide, when they see the help that we can give, just that like weight being lifted off them, you can just really see that this is going to make an impact on their life to have this help.
You mentioned tribal IDs, and I've been talking a little bit with Native Vote, which is it's a sub-organization of Wisconsin Conservation Voters here in Wisconsin, and there's still significant issues for Indigenous people because some of them, like they on the reservations, they don't always do addresses the same way as everybody else, and they only got the right to be citizens and vote 100 years ago. So like, there's still issues. Are there specific issues in those tribal IDs, or do most of those tribal IDs work in Wisconsin, or do they have the same problem as the students?
We don't see that as much, just given our where we're working at, largely metropolitan areas. So
sure.
We're not out on reservations that much or anything like that. So can't speak too much to any issues coming up there.
Okay. How are other? You said you have organizations, like your organizations nationwide. You have chapters in all these states. What are the trends nationally? Is it moving in this direction where we're trying to not only require ID but also make it more permanent and make it even more difficult to vote? Is that kind of the national trend, or is Wisconsin an outlier there?
No, yeah, I mean, I think that's a national trend, and we've seen for years Wisconsin kind of being a testing grounds for a lot of things, and I think this is kind of emblematic of that. We've seen the boom in voter ID laws happening over the last couple of years. We're seeing things like the SAVE Act and like documentary proof of citizenship being brought up now, just a whole other can of worms. And so, the trend really does seem to be, let's crack down, let's make this harder for some reason.
For some reason. If somebody needs help and is listening to this and either is somebody or knows somebody who maybe isn't voting because they're not sure if they have the right idea or whatever, is there a website? Can they call your organization? Can they email you? How do they do that?
Oh, yeah, all of the above. VoteRiders.org, VoteRiders.org. You can email us, helpline@voteriders.org. You can also call us, or you can text us at 866-432-8683.
Okay. And you're based in Milwaukee, is that right?
Based in Milwaukee, yes.
And do you have like outreach in other communities, or is it mostly?
Yeah, no, we go, all around the state. Again, tend to go to places where we know there is a definitive need. And so we work with a lot of partners, social service providers, shelters, things like that, where we know there's a definitive need for our service.
Yeah, right. All right. Jake Spence, anything else you want to mention that I didn't ask about?
No, just really appreciative of having us on and being able to talk about this.
Yeah, good. Thank you again for the time, and best of luck with the election coming up.
Yeah, thanks, Rob.
And we're back, and thanks again to Jake Spence for that. Again, April 1st is the state Supreme Court race. It's a whole bunch of local races, and it's that massive thing on the ballot, ballot measure, constitutional amendment. Now what's our final question then?
Well, and by final question, I mean like final question for today, not for like ever. Because Omar's like, "What do you mean final question? You're never gonna do it again?" No, I'm always gonna ask.
Sounded like a threat.
I am nosy forever. It's never not gonna happen. So our question for everyone is, if you could be part of any important, essential moment in history, what moment would it be?
Oh, important?
What? Important to you. You think it's important, right?
I think this is very important.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be what everybody else says is important, but like what moment like in time would you have liked to have been a part of? Not be the center of. Like, not that you take over or take on this of someone's identity.
We're not Forrest Gumping these things.
No. Not at all.
Just to be there and
just to be there to witness
moment.
that, to experience that moment. Omar has an idea already. I can tell.
you're in Yorkshire, England in the 17th century, and you have a hankering for some fruit pie, and you go to your local
Fruit pie.
Bakery, dessertery.
Dessertery?
That's not a word, but that's what I'm going to go with.
It is now.
It is today. And you get a nice heaping slice of apple pie, and suddenly now there's a slice of cheese on top.
Oh my God.
Or
cheese fell on top of it by accident? Or
No. This is a new trend in the birth of the putting cheese on top of pies thing.
Was that in the 17th century?
I looked it up. It was the 17th century. It did start in Yorkshire, England, where they started putting Wensleydale cheese, which is a savory cheese, and that because it's not available everywhere, they started putting cheddar cheese on it. I don't know if you've ever seen someone eat cheese on their pie.
Have not.
But the first reaction you get is, what?
Ew.
And I would like to be there for the very first time so I could just be...
The first person to be like, ew?
Yeah. Someone needed to tell them.
That's not the one I think you would have chose, but...
Which one do you think I would have chose?
Well, like a famous person, but...
I've met famous people. They're whatever.
They're fine.
But
they're fine.
The person who put cheese on pie for the first time and then forever changed the trajectory of pie-based traditions. And
did it though? Because I did not hear about it until I got here, and even then, it was a few years before I heard about it.
It is very
common. I didn't hear about it until today.
Yeah.
Oh, well, you're lucky.
It's a thing in Wisconsin. I thought it was a thing in Wisconsin that happened.
Cheese on a pie?
Yeah.
Cheese on a pie.
Cheesecake?
No.
No.
I wish.
Apple pie and cheddar cheese.
And it's specifically to apple pie, right? Like
apple pie and cheddar cheese is like obviously.
Yeah.
And it was one time when we went to I don't know what small town things are called anymore. Like I don't know. Mineral Point. We went to a restaurant in Middle Point and they had it as an item, and I was like, "What is this? And why are we selling it?"
Exactly.
So you wanted to be part of this moment to intervene?
You don't have to just to watch and be the first person to say, "Ew."
I at least need to watch
butterfly
this.
effect.
Who knows what would change in the world because of it? It could be for the worse. We could have mechanized robots everywhere. I don't know, but someone needed to stop this.
Okay,
and that is interesting.
And you could have tried. You just want to be back then to.
Yes,
that's a very specific. You have thought about this for a little bit.
It bugs me when I see it.
It bugs me too, because now I want an apple pie.
But I don't want a slice of cheese.
But not with cheese on it. But not with cheese on it. But I do now want a slice of apple pie, like warm apple pie. That's yummy.
Yeah.
That's delicious. But then you add cheese and it ruins it.
Exactly.
Now I'm sad for the apple pie because it had potential. All right. Go ahead, Dave. What is your moment?
Well, that was a good one. I wasn't expecting that at all, but that's
a very good.
I don't know. I was thinking a lot of things. I'm just a really, really big Jimi Hendrix fan, so I would want to see. I mean, I want to see the whole era, but you just want to pinpoint a moment.
One moment, yeah.
The moment when he came to Monterey Pop Festival in the United States when I first got to see him, or at Woodstock, or the first time that he performed in England in front of the Beatles.
Yeah.
And people couldn't figure out who this guy was, what he was doing. And he's such an original and such a talented person, and everybody's imitated him since, and nobody has come close to him. And it was just like he was only here.
He was a moment of time,
and then he was gone, and it just like that's the moment I want to be there, front row,
to see that. Yeah, that's awesome. That's a good one. Rob,
mine are going to be predictably sports related.
We know.
Yeah, I would say ice bowl, but that would be uncomfortable. It was just too cold. But no, assuming that this is not like I could be there not as like my current self, not as like a little kid.
You would just be your current self.
Yeah. So because I would think like Miracle on Ice, which was 1980.
Oh, you talk about that a lot, don't you? I forget about it.
A lot?
Yeah, he still talks about it. Like every time he watches hockey a little bit, it's like
I'm not a big hockey person, but
you're not. That moment though is.
But I remember seeing that on TV. It wasn't live on TV. They showed it later because it was 1980. But it was in like Plaza, New York.
I get goosebumps just talking about it.
Yeah, I was like 5 or 6 years old, and our guys beat the Russians, and it was amazing. It was not the gold medal match. People think that was a gold medal match, but it was not. But it was an amazing sports moment. That or like Game 6 was Game 5. It was Game 5 Brewers versus Angels in the American League Championship Series, which Cecil Cooper doing the thing with his hands and get down, and winning that game to get to the. I listened to that game on the radio when I was like 7, and we got to the World Series,
which was cool because it was Bob Uecker. There's nothing like it,
right? Nothing like that.
But I was wondering real quick on the Miracle on Ice. I was wondering if that last iconic line was rehearsed at all. Like,
do you believe in miracles?
Do you believe in good fortune? Like he's like maybe. Or do you believe in it? Like he rehearsed it because in case something happens, like I gotta have something at the end of the game.
Yeah. Well, he was young.
Everyone's gonna remember.
Yeah. Al Michaels was. He's like in his 80s now, so he must have been. Well, I guess he wasn't that young. He must have been like in the late 30s, early
30s or 40s. Yeah.
So he was experienced.
It's such an iconic line.
Do you believe in miracles? Yes. Yeah. And I've watched the last minute of that game on YouTube. I don't know how many times.
I have too.
Yeah. And I mean you can see the whole game. I mean, and it was like the last couple minutes of the match are just insane.
They still had to win another game. If they would have lost,
they
would all.
Yeah. Well, they almost did. They almost didn't beat Finland. The next game was Finland, and they had to win that to get the gold medal. And
but
did.
Russia hadn't lost in like how many years? Like 20 or 30 years? Like, it was something crazy like that.
Yeah, it was basically a professional hockey team.
Yeah.
That Russia had, or that the Soviet Union had.
And there were Badger ties on there, right? On that team? Was it
Mark Johnson?
Mark Johnson?
There were two Badgers. Mark Johnson was the goalie, and there's another, I can't remember, but it was my brother and I had a little parade.
Did you really? That's right. I knew that.
Yep. In our upstairs hallway, and it was great. But to have been in the room in New York, I think that would be pretty amazing. What's yours, Stephanie?
That's a good one.
Yeah, that's a good one, I guess. I'm not into sports. I do like sports, but mine's not sports related whatsoever. If you know me well enough, you know that I have been somewhat interested in music for a very, very long time. And I think one of the moments I would have loved to see, and only in that moment, and then come right back, would be the premiere of Beethoven's Seventh Symphony. If you know that symphony, it's an incredible, magical symphony. It is impactful and historical in so many different ways. I am a big fan of him, and I think I prefer the Ninth Symphony, quite frankly. But I do have to acknowledge how important the Seventh Symphony was for him, and such. So I think I would have loved to seen that when it premiered, and have that feeling, now, Rob knows when I hear something for the first time, for somebody brand new or somebody who's coming, I'm they are about to change music, and I would have loved to be in that moment to know that he just changed so many things with this one symphony. So that's mine's just not as fun and cool or historic as stopping
cheese on pie.
I mean, I can't be cheese on pie. I think that might be the most essential thing to witness and maybe even disrupt. You did extra credit because I said, what moment do you want to be part of? And you went, not only is this the moment I want to be part of, I want to disrupt it. So nobody else is harmed after this day.
It's worth all the changes in history.
I'd like to see Beethoven meet Jimi Hendrix.
I mean,
lock them in a room together and see
what comes out of it. Yeah, I would love to hear them talk about music.
Could that be Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure?
I was about to say that.
So really, Dave would like to go back in time when they were writing Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure and add a scene.
With Jimi Hendrix in it.
All right, y'all. We'll be back next week.
365 Amplified is produced and edited by me, Rob Chappell, and is a production of 365 Media Foundation, a non-profit, local, independent media organization in Madison, Wisconsin. Wherever you're listening to this right now, hit the subscribe or follow button to get new episodes every Friday. And between episodes, get your latest news at madison365.org and follow us on Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Threads. Wherever you get your news, we'll be there.